Nakormeik ilunasi, Tamanigatsi. Excellencies, members of the Swedish Parliament, fellow laureates, and friends and family who is here. I'm deeply honored and humbled to be receiving the Right Livelihood Award at a time that I feel really where the world is appearing to be breaking apart, or breaking open, I should say, on so many levels. And never has there been a time, at least not in my lifetime, where I have felt such concerned worry over how our world and our global society itself seems to be falling apart, crying for very strong leadership on issues which matter to us all, whether that's our environment, whether it's the economy, or world peace. And because of this seemingly synchronistic convergence of energies, minds, and hearts, it feels like we are on a cusp of great change as we move towards better understanding our troubled common atmosphere and our fragmented common humanity. And I don't necessarily mean that it's at the political level that we feel that very often, but often I feel it when I speak to audiences such as this and beyond, where the civil society is now getting ahead of its politicians, and there seems to be that convergence that I feel and sense wherever I go. The world that I was born into certainly has changed forever. I traveled only by dog team the first 10 years of my life. Both my cousin, who is here as my guest, and I remember those days where we lived on the ice and snow and traveled in my childhood with our small family as we were carried over the ice and the icy terrain in the northern Canada with my brothers leading the dog team. And the Arctic may seem very cold and desolate for a lot of people who have not experienced the beauty and the warmth of the Arctic in that sense. But to us, it really has brought us the most succulent and nutritious food that anybody could ever imagine that keeps us warm. And I remember a good friend of mine who just recently passed away said, "It ain't cup of soup that's going to keep you warm in -50. It's going to be the wonderful food, the traditional food that we hunt and eat that keeps us very warm. And not only that, it is the great lessons that come to us from the land that help to develop the judgment and the wisdom of our young people. It isn't just the technical aspect of the hunt that we learn about how to be good providers and natural conservationists, because that's how the world works, but we also learn about how we work, and it's the character building of our children that is so important. And Inuit of my generation certainly have lived both in the Ice Age and the Space Age. The modern world has arrived very slowly in some parts of the world, but certainly for us, it has happened in one generation. And these rapid changes that have happened in our world, along with the historical traumas, which very few people know about in the Arctic, have broken up our communities, much of which I have been witness to in my own lifetime. And what we have held very sacred and what seemed permanent, such as our hunting and training grounds, is now really starting to melt very fast. And the Arctic snow, as well as the ice and the frozen terrain, which we have lived and depended on, is now starting to diminish and creating a lot of havoc and chaos in our communities, of course. For Inuit, the ice and snow represent transportation and mobility. As the snow forms and falls, the ice forms, that becomes our transportation and highways to the environment, which is our supermarket. And so for us, whenever there is a precarious situation that occurs with the ice and snow, it becomes safety and security first and foremost. And so as the permafrost melts, and as the roads and runways buckle, there's a lot of homes that have to be relocated. homes and buildings along the coast that sink into the sea, and they're falling into the sea. And you just have to Google Alaska and some of those communities to know that this is actually happening. There are pictures of homes that are already fallen into the sea. We have glaciers that are melting so fast that used to be streams safe enough to cross for our hunters are now becoming torrent rivers where we have had, in fact, drownings as a result of that. We have new species that have come into the Arctic, new species of birds, of fish, of insects that arrive annually today, and some of which we don't have names for because they're rather new to our regions. And the ice has become very difficult in some areas. It is worse. In other areas, not so bad, but the trends certainly are there everywhere in the circumpolar world. And even the most seasoned hunter oftentimes will have difficulty reading the conditions of the snow because it forms differently now as a result of the warming Arctic sink. And so that land that is such an important part of our spirit, a very big part of our culture, still today, even if we are wage earners that work 9 to 5, we are still a hunting, gathering, fishing people. And it's very much a part of our physical and economic well-being, but oftentimes now it's very unpredictable, and the incredible, ingenious traditional knowledge that we have carried all these generations is now rather unpredictable, and oftentimes our elders, as they're trying to pass down the education onto our younger generation, often will have a disclaimer and say, this is how it used to be always, but now with climatic changes, it's not so easy to read the conditions, so one has to be more and more careful as you're out there in pursuit of the animals that we eat. We have lived for thousands of years very sustainably in our environment, and we have been stewards of our land. And it's not only the melting ice which is being threatened by climate change, but it's also the wisdom of Inuit culture. Meaning, what we teach our children is not just the technical aspect of the hunt, it is actually the character building that we also teach our children on that icy terrain. And when you are taught how to be patient by nature, you remember that and integrate that into your everyday life, no matter where you may go afterwards. And so it is about the actual character building of our children. It isn't just about the depletion of the ice or the polar bears that are vulnerable now. It is about the people themselves who have gone through tumultuous change and historical traumas that are now being threatened. And as the ice goes, then of course, that wisdom and that traditional knowledge that needs to be passed down to the younger generation, where we have the highest suicide rates in North America and where we are dealing with poverty and hunger in the Arctic in much bigger numbers than we've ever known anywhere else. So if we continue to allow that melt to happen, we lose more than the planet that has nurtured us for all of human history, certainly, but we lose that wisdom required for us to sustain it. And so my life's work really has been about reminding people of their importance in the web of existence on this planet. And my core message is that we're all connected. In the Arctic, we may be far away from the corridors of power, but the hunter who falls through the thinning sea ice in the Arctic is connected to the industries of the South, to the rising waters and stronger hurricanes which threaten the United States and many other countries now, to the melting glaciers in the Andes and the Himalayas, to the flooding of low-lying and small island states, as the Foreign Affairs Minister for the Marshalls have so eloquently spoken about today as well. That's what connects us. As the Arctic melts, other places sink. And you can't get clearer than that in terms of understanding that connectivity that we have on this common planet of ours. And so we have to start to think in terms of how foreign policy, environmental and economic policy must be dealt with in the same breath. And there can be no doubt that when an entire people who have the right to remain the way that they have been as Indigenous people, reliant on their environment and their climate, is starting to become an issue of our right to survive as Inuit, our right to hunt, our right to educate our children, our right to health, our right to have safety and security, certainly makes climate change a human rights issue. There can be no doubt about that. On a personal level, I'm often asked how I have come from such humble beginnings. As I say, I started to learn English only when I was 6 years of age, traveled only by dog team the first 10 years of my life, and then went off as I was sent off for school for 8 years to be educated, in a sense, by strangers in a very different setting, having lost my mother tongue and having to gain it back. And people often ask, how, from humble beginnings, have I come to reach such a global recognition? And first, I think it is that deep sense of responsibility that I feel towards my Inuit community, as we all do, as we work so hard for our own communities and our own regions in the way that we and many laureates have done. But not only is it from my official elected positions that I have held with the Inuit Circumpolar Council, but for me, it is really about being a mother and a grandmother that really drives me forward in all that I do. I have 2 grandsons. One is 18 and one is almost 3. And many of our children are in need of that kind of strong championer because of the future that is so unpredictable today. I was once asked, and because I want to add this personal component to it, what leadership means to me. And for me, I responded with this. Leadership means never losing sight of the fact that the issues at hand are so much bigger than oneself. Leadership is about working from a principled and ethical place within oneself, and it is to model authentically for others a sense of calm, clarity, and focus. Leadership is to always check inward, to ensure you're leading from a position of strength, not fear or victimhood, so you do not project your own limitations to those you are modeling possibilities for. And that's what I have tried to stand by. And so when I received the call that I was nominated and that I would be then later receiving this award, I felt that connection to the work that I have been doing, that it doesn't need to be in a place where you're a politician or an economist or a scientist to make headway and be recognized and have that resonance of truth with others around you in that sense. And so the Right Livelihood Award came to me at a time where I was rather tired and wondering what were the next steps after the book that I have just written called The Right to Be Cold was launched, and I had just finished the book tour, and I thought, what are the next steps in this life of mine, and where will it bring me? And so when that news came, I was truly touched and truly honored that there is a cosmic order to life, indeed, when all of this happens. So I believe it is also the checking inwards in the grounding that I've received in my Inuit culture, along with very many life-changing perspectives from many personal losses myself in our family over the years, that have been instrumental in my own ability, I think, to work with the global community and model that possibility for our youth and for others. So I deeply thank the Right Livelihood Award Foundation and the jury, and notably, I don't like to single out, but I will, Sharon, who actually I think read my book and who believed in my work as well, who is part of the Right Livelihood Award Foundation, but to all of you who made this happen, giving that kind of importance to my work and belief in my life's work so that I may continue to expand that circle. means a great deal to me. And I will build upon this great honor. And meeting the fellow laureates has been just tremendously heartwarming for me to know others who fight so hard to defend the rights of all of those that need defending, where many of our own governments and institutions have all but forgotten about us. And so I will build upon this, there is no doubt, and carry on conveying how the protection of Inuit culture is very much connected to the protection and well-being of our common humanity as a whole. So I am deeply grateful, Nakalmik, to all of you. Thank you. Thank you.